Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the ScoreCEO Jumpstarting Your Webinar Jumpstart Webinar series. And today we've been asked to talk about disputes, and lately customers of ours have been asking us about Metro 2 disputing and technical factual disputing, which to us fundamentally means the same thing. And after this webinar, we hope to clarify all the differences so that you can understand that actually disputing with a technical factual dispute process, you can incorporate a Metro 2 strategy into that amongst others, with both direct to creditor disputes or data furnisher disputes, as well as CRA disputes. But let's go ahead and get started. Today we have no invites today. It's just me today. If you need to get a hold of me, you can always email me at joshua.carmona@scoreinc.com. I'll normally respond within 24 business hours, if not the same day. But feel free to reach out to me if you need to clear up any doubts that you may have regarding compliance issues. I'm not an attorney. I don't tout myself as an attorney, but I've been around the space for a long time, and more importantly, I've already been engaged by one of the regulatory bodies when we were in the credit repair space. So I have a lot of insight on what happens before it gets you into trouble, and then what happens after you're in trouble, and how do you manage that expectation? So it's an interesting story. If any of you want to talk about it and use that as a motivating content to go ahead and be more compliant and successful, I appreciate and welcome the chat. And if you need any consultancy or any questions you need answered, all you need to do is at the end of the call, there'll be a link that you can book a call with me for 15 minutes. And based on that call, we can see if it warrants additional calls as well. Remember, at ScoreCEO, we want to supply you with the best tools that help you keep your business compliant and successful. I'd like, this is a legal disclaimer mentioning what we just talked about. We're not attorneys. We're offering our opinions and not legal advice. If you need any legal advice, or you feel like there's something that you need to do differently and you need a legal opinion, I'm not the person to ask. I'm giving you my opinions based on execution of those legal opinions and consults that we've received in the past from our own attorneys, in-house attorneys, as well as Greenspoon and Marner. So remember, always run everything by your legal consultant or your legal group that's consulting your business all the time. So let's get started. What is Metro 2 and what is it for? I don't know if most of you will probably know this, and if you want, you can go ahead and raise your hands if you want to or not, but how many of you do know what the Metro 2 type format is? Go ahead and raise your hands. Well, it says it on the screen, but did you know that before you got here? This is the standardized format that the Consumer Data Industry Association fundamentally adopts to be able to communicate all parties in the right context, right? So if you think of the consumer, you think of the credit bureau, and you think of the data furnisher, how do they communicate? And what are the standards in doing so, right? So there is something that's called a Metro 2 type format. And that Metro 2 format is fundamentally the structure of how all the data is moved between platforms, so that they can, the credit reporting agency, when they process a dispute, they use a system called eOscar, which follows that Metro 2 format. And both the fields and the content of the fields, like let's say an account number or an account name or the account address, right? Those types of pieces of information follow a structure that everybody understands. Fundamentally, I think they include the consumers here, but I don't think the consumers really understand this format, because it took us a long time to understand it and codify a lot of it in ScoreCEO. So that's what we're here to do. How can you use the Metro 2 type disputing format and to go ahead and enhance your disputing strategy? I want to preface all of this, whether I'm talking about the technical factual dispute method, the Metro 2 dispute method, or any methodology. We at SCORE believe, based on millions of disputes that we've done for our customers over the past 10 years, we believe that the only true thing that works all the time is to consistently update and to consistently change the content of your disputes without committing fraud or lying on that dispute. That means if you really don't know that it doesn't belong to the customer, you shouldn't be saying that on your dispute because it might not be true. If it's paid as agreed or it's not mine and you really don't know that, you shouldn't be putting that in your disputes. So what is Metro 2? Metro 2 basically lets you engage the content of your consumer credit files by challenging the validity or the veracity of the content and whether or not that content should be displayed at all. Okay, so Metro 2 is a way of disputing, it's a methodology of creating disputes, but it's it really leverages the truth aspect of this. I always tell my customers, if it's not true, don't say it, because that will creep up on you. With Metro 2, everything has to be correct. You can't file false anything and say false anything because it's a lie, and you can't sustain a lie. So I want to preface that with everything. That is my opinion, and that's the way we do it at SCORE. We only dispute things that we know are untrue or not true, and normally that's almost never. So we assume that everything is untrue, and we ask basically unassertive comments within our dispute reasons and our templates so that they can be investigated because of a verification or a validation of the content. And if that is not investigation is performed correctly, the consumer, based on the Fair Credit Reporting Act, has the ability to challenge that and to ask for it to be removed or repaired. And you'll see that in a minute. But fundamentally, when you're disputing with Metro 2 a format, it's looking to basically have a role of consistency, right, in data reporting. That's what it's trying to do. That all the data reporting is understood by everyone. That it gives you a structure so that you can engage each one of these pieces of information. Just think about, on a credit report, how many pieces of data are on the report. And I'll wait for a second and I'll let you guys tell me, how many pieces of data do you think is on a credit report for you to challenge? Go ahead and write that number in the chat, please. And Almas, as they write those numbers in the chat, go ahead and don't say who did it, but just give me the numbers.
Okay.
Are there any numbers in the chat yet?
No.
How many fields do you think are on a credit report that you can challenge based on the content? That includes an account number, an account name, date of last activity, last reported date, all of these, the balance, the status, all of these pieces of information. How many?
20 or so.
20 or so? Well, it's a bit more than 26. It really depends on the report that you're pulling. Most of your reports that you're pulling are not, I would say, real estate or real reports, right? That you can use to get underwritten on, right? Like a Meridian report. Most of the reports that you guys are all using in your businesses with your consumers or customers is a credit monitoring report. And I've seen those numbers to be between 22 and 28. So depending on the report format, 22 and 28 items, you can go ahead and challenge them. So think about that, right? If you have 22 to 28 pieces of information that you can challenge in any quantity in every 30 days, why would you even think about saying it doesn't belong to me, it's paid as agreed, it's not mine, or it's in duplicate, without that being 150% true. I want you to think about that, right? So that means that you can challenge the account number. Let's talk about the account number, right? The account number is something that comes with on normal credit monitoring reports. It's masked. The last 4 digits are masked. How does the consumer actually know that account is actually his? And some of these credit monitoring reports have equivalent account numbers. So they don't really display the actual account number. They display an equivalent number, and they mask the last 4 of that equivalent number. But how does the consumer know that? Well, that's probably where you want to start, besides any other thing that's derogatory. But those are things that need to be corrected, and you can challenge for any reason. Now, does that mean that they're going to add the 4 digits? Absolutely not. They're trying to protect the customer's privacy by masking the account number from potential third-party readings of their personal information, right? So, but I'm giving you an example of that, right? That is something that is unclear. The business of the report, with regards to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, states that it has to be correct or verifiable. Correct to me is 100%, not 98 or 99%. And 100% verifiable means that if you have a doubt, they should be able to answer the question whether it's correct or not. So there's no real reason why you have to say it doesn't belong to me, it's paid as agreed, it's not mine, or it's in duplicate, unless it's actually true and you have evidence of that. Okay, this is important. Why is it important? Well, because, we're under the premise of everything that's going to be, we want the data furnishers and we want the credit reporting agencies to go ahead and dispute and answer properly. And there are systems that do that. But unfortunately, we start saying things that make it more difficult for your dispute letters to be read. So if they're talking about an account number as a header field, that's what the account number is called on your report. And the content of that account number is what you're addressing to be either verified or let's call it disputed. And you actually want that piece of information. One of the best ways to do it is to engage a dispute process in a way that their systems can automatically and easily understand what information you're referring to. And that's why you want to always mention the header files and then tell them what it is and maybe what you want it to be. Or point out what pieces of account data you need validated or verified. And we'll look at some samples of letters that do that. And at the end of this presentation, I'll go ahead and I'll have a conversation with Almas and let her, discuss how, how her and some others that have done disputes for us in the past inside of ScoreCEO, how they have gone ahead and created their own dispute reasons based on a technical factual dispute process. Okay. Let's look at what the steps are in Metro 2, right? You want to identify the error. That's basically as soon as you look at a credit report, that's the first thing you're looking for, right? You're looking to identify things that are not populated when they should be populated, things that are inconsistent, things that are different from one report to another, things that are just wrong, things that should be reported and not being reported based on whether or not you've disputed that or not. That could be an E8 violation. Okay, these are things that you want to identify on an initial round, and on every ensuing round, what is wrong. Is it personal information? Are the accounts wrong? Do you have accounts that don't really belong to you or are unrecognizable to the consumer, or could be unrecognizable to the consumer? Or any other errors like commentary and things that for like public records and such that make those accounts negative, or at least point them out as being negative, right? Excuse me. You want the CRA to go ahead and be able to perform an investigation, and you want to go ahead and delineate that format so that they can look at what data is being, and when you're doing a Metro 2, what you're disputing, what is the content of that dispute, and what that content should look like, and what is the problem. And you'll see examples of that in a few minutes, right? You want to monitor as well. You want to monitor for responses from the data furnisher, right? You're going to file a dispute. The CRA is going to perform an investigation based on your Metro 2 format, but you can also address these to your creditors as well, because you can send disputes based on the Factor 312 amendment in 2003, if I'm not mistaken. Consumers can not only dispute to CRAs, but they can dispute that same dispute directly to the creditor. You can do both at the same time. On top of that, you can use a structured format like Metro 2 to inspire readability and make it easy for them to extract information and answer whether they correct it or not, or they delete it or not. At least they're reading it. You want them to read your disputes easily, so that they can perform their investigations easily as well. We all know that the system is flawed, so that's not going to happen all the time. But when it does, it's a beautiful thing. And then you want to go ahead and once, depending on whether or not you're disputing from the CRA that engages through eOscar, the data furnisher with the related data, and you can also engage the data furnisher directly with the related data that you're disputing. But at some point in time, the data furnisher or the CRA themselves are going to be updated either through eOscar because they initiated an investigation, or the consumer initiated the investigation with the data furnisher directly. That's when I don't know if you have all noticed this, but sometimes you dispute when you're using direct to creditor disputes, whether you're using a Metro 2 type dispute methodology or a technical factual dispute methodology or your own methodology. If you're disputing both at the same time, I don't know if you've noticed that sometimes they differ in opinions. Sometimes you may get a positive result from the furnisher and not from the CRA, or vice versa. Normally, it's the first of the two options I just mentioned, but we've seen disputes go out and the CRA will perform the investigation and leave everything remaining the same, but the creditor responds with something else, that it's correct, that they're correcting it, or it's been deleted or repaired. And what that means is that they've had the credit reporting agency go ahead and do that. They've informed them of that, and maybe the CRA did not update before the creditor performed that answered the consumer directly, because they also have to answer the consumer as well. And you want to go ahead and every 30 days to 45 days, depending on what the timing is, you're looking at how to follow up and go ahead and see that the report is, things are happening correctly or not. Okay. But like I said, there are so many reasons why, and permutations and combinations of reasons why you can dispute any line item. If you think about it, if you have over 20 items, the mathematical calculation to dispute any line item over, let's say, about 25 items is in the hundreds of thousands of combinations of different disputes without repeating one. So why say something that's not true when you have all these tools at your disposal without breaking the law, and as a matter of fact, following it to the T of the letter? Let's talk about the importance of the Metro 2. It's a disputing method, right? It's basically looking at the components of the report, and it's telling the credit reporting agencies, or asking the credit reporting agencies, when you invoke this methodology, to go ahead and direct their attention to specific areas of the report using the format that has been standardized to communicate between CRAs, consumers, and data furnishers. Okay, so that's probably the best way to get your disputes read or not misinterpreted. Can we avoid the amounts of times that they perform no work at all and supply you with a frivolous response? No, that's always going to happen. But you want to be read more times rather than not. Think of it as lowering your ability to not be read or enacted upon. That means doing something upon your disputes. If you make it easier for them, the higher the probability that you will get some sort of response. Hopefully, a response that improves the quality of the report that you're helping to dispute. Any questions till now?
No, not yet.
Okay. So let's look at the complicated structures of the Metro 2 file. Please do not be overwhelmed by this. This is not for you. This is more of background information so you can understand how this data, it follows a formatting, and with regards to the header information and with regards to the base segment information as well. And you can see some things here like account number, account type, account status, date open, credit limit, current balance, right? You have some pieces of information that you can contest on the Metro 2 file structure, okay? But when we look at the technical factual dispute method, you'll see you have a whole lot more, right? Now, what is the part of the Fair Credit Reporting Act that you really want to focus on, right? And we call it there's a certain section of that called 1681 IA1, right? And what does that do? That section of the Fair Credit Reporting Act basically says that you have to investigate disputes promptly, right? The CRAs need to. There's a time frame for resolution, and there's a notification of correction or not. But there's a notification, a notice. But this also applies similarly to under a different statute, under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, for data furnishers as well. Okay, especially if they're collection agencies, right? Some data furnishers may be contesting or responding something under the FCRA because they're not engaging in a collection endeavor, and that collection endeavor always covers all data furnishers. So with data furnishers, it's a little tricky, but I can say if it's a collection account, it's definitely covered under FDCPA. Okay, and there's another statute for that, and we'll go over that in a bit. But fundamentally, CRAs have to investigate disputes, as you know, regarding accuracy and completeness of any item on the credit file. Anything, if it's on the report, it's in game. It's disputable. Okay, to be accurate, all right, to be complete. If the time frame of the response doesn't happen within 30 days, there could be a problem, unless if within that time frame there was multiple disputes. That's why I say be very careful with sending stagnant or disputes that happen over time, like you dispute 5 items today and then 5 items in 5 days and 5 items in 5 days. That creates frequency, but at the same time, if for any reason you've disputed something new within that time frame, or something within that time frame, it could elongate the response time to 45 days. So you want to be careful with that. And, the notice of correction is the responses that our customers get. And what you see, if you're operating with credit monitoring, what you're really looking for is not really to receive any of that information unless you're also helping your customers prepare a legal case. You normally don't even need to see the responses on that anymore, because you can see from one report to the next, every 30 days or so, you can see how that information has changed or been updated. Some interesting rules that you guys want to just keep and look into, right? 1681 EB, right? This ensures that the information on that report has to be accurate on a consumer's credit report. All right. If we look at CA4 under 1681 in the Fair Credit Reporting Act, it mandates that CRAs investigate and correct disputed items within 30 days. So there's a statute in the Fair Credit Reporting Act that provisions that. Now, why am I mentioning these little statutes? Some of you want to include information without acting as an attorney, but if you want to give context to that as it relates to the law to make it simpler for them to read and analyze what you mean on these dispute reasons, you can go ahead and invoke these different statutes, right? We're talking about CA4. Right, under 681 as well, 681C, right? It requires that accurate disputing of the data first delinquency for adverse items be correct, right? If we look at the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, 1692, and I think there's a mistake here, but it is 1692E8, prohibits debt collectors from providing false and misleading information about the debt, like not performing the investigation. You'd be surprised on how many customers the collection agencies or the data furnishers respond by saying, hey, we performed an investigation, and they actually haven't. And you can tell. And this is, if you have a legal model, this is something that you're trying to look at and monitor for, because each of those could be a potential violation that could help your customer get a statutory settlement, and sometimes with regards to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, there may be some damages involved as well. Let's look at some sample dispute letters under Metro 2. Dispute due to inaccurate personal information. This is the premise on this is really citing the law 1681A1, right? And this would be your format, right? You can format this as you wish with regards to the header information, but with regards to the content, you want to be very clear on saying whether or not something actually is not there or not. You want to follow correct or not, unless you're 150% sure. Okay, and so be very careful. But this is just correcting the name. I mean, that's really, to me, that's a no-brainer, right? Correcting a name. But you'd be surprised how many rounds of disputes sometimes it takes to correct a name. Some of you have already experienced this frustration, I'm sure of it, but they just don't pay attention to your disputes. Sometimes it's because you're not telling them that the field name is name that you're trying to correct, and the incorrect name is this, right? And then you want to go ahead and show them what the correct information is so that they can validate that. You can also go ahead and say the correct name is the following, right? Address, the same incorrect information. And the validity of what's validating that are copies of the driver's license and any current bill with the address that has the customer's name on it as well. This is a format for, let's say, personal information that you can do for Metro 2. But you see how they name the account field and the status of that. What is the incorrect information? Okay, let's look at another example of this. Disputes due to incorrect account status, right? So once again, you want to go ahead and say, I'm disputing the status of the following account on my credit report under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, citing the according law, right? And then they're mentioning account number. And what is the account number? Current status, incorrect status, current status, correct status. You can also mention the correct account number if you want, right? Add a field that says correct account number and enter the account number. These you can go ahead and in ScoreCEO, you can create templates like this if you want to invoke a Metro 2 type reporting method. But look at the way this is. Each one of these disputes are going on one line item at a time, right? Now you can include multiple line items, but be very careful with that because it gets confusing for them to read, right? So let's talk about this third example here. This is for when you have an unauthorized account. That means there's an account that the consumer doesn't recognize for some reason, right? Well, it's telling them what the account number is, and it's telling them exactly what's wrong with it. And it's telling them what a resolution statement is. Please investigate or remove this unauthorized account from my credit report. I have enclosed a copy of an FTC identity theft report. So what do you think the answer would be if this is? What are you going to do if this information is incorrect and you're just using a method to use a method? Be very careful with this because this can make you start aiding, abetting, and a fraud by providing an incorrect dispute when you know you should know better, right? Now, customers can be wrong, but the way Score does it is that we always assume that all the accounts will never be disputed for the following reasons. It doesn't belong to me. It's paid as agreed. It's not mine, and it's in duplicate. We never dispute that way, even if the CRO tells us to, because we don't want to be aiding and abetting in a fraud based on confusion between the relationship between you and your consumer. And I think that that's a great, safe premise to follow because we don't know what's actually true. Now, I've seen some cases that are exactly the way I'm telling you what I'm telling you not to do and are true. But in that case, they come substantiated with evidence. And as part of the evidence, when you're challenging something and giving it validity, you want to go ahead and file an FTC identity theft report, but you shouldn't lie and create a false report because that creates a whole nother problem for you. And some of those issues could be criminal if you're caught doing something like that. So be very careful in filing a false identity theft report. I've seen it done before. Do not do this. It's the wrong thing to do. Now, if you want to challenge this under Metro 2, you can ask them to validate or verify that and tell them that it may be incorrect. Tell them you're unsure. That's fair because it's the right of the consumer to challenge anything, but don't admit it. Just tell them that I believe. That's when if you look at this and you've heard how we dispute in ScoreCEO, a dispute reason for us when we're disputing on behalf of our customers is an unassertive statement followed by two or more pieces of account data, like the account number, right? Followed by a resolution statement saying, please investigate, remove this unauthorized account. But we would say, please investigate or remove it because this information may be unauthorized or incorrect on my account. You're not saying that it is. You're saying you're unclear and you want an investigation performed. And the law permits that. And if they find that they can't validate that information or verify that information, the requirements of either the data furnisher or the credit reporting agency based on either the Fair Credit Reporting Act or the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act is to correct or remove or whatever your resolution is. So be clear that if you're not telling the credit reporting agencies what you need to be done is also something you want to take another look at. That might improve your results a bit over time. You need to go ahead and be sure that you're pointing out not only what's inaccurate, but why it's inaccurate, and also what you want done, a resolution statement. And if you look at Metro 2 type reporting, that's exactly the format, but they separate it by accounts, and they separate and by similar accounts, and they separate it into a different structured format. Let's look at duplicate accounts. Same thing, right? Please merge or remove the duplicate accounts. Well, maybe, but I would say something more like, if it's a duplicate account, please remove the incorrect account and let them determine that. Okay, even though you're telling them what the duplicate account number is. Okay, what I've seen happen when you do a dispute reason in this format or use the Metro 2 format, what I've seen happen is that both of the accounts sometimes get deleted. And that's a problem sometimes because that might affect the customer's score based on what type of account it is, but at least the derogatory information was removed. So that could happen. Be aware of that. Let's look at incorrect payment history, how they address that. And if you look at, they're addressing different areas of the code, but they're talking about payment history, similar to the second example I showed you earlier, mentioning the incorrect information, the right information for that account number. Let's look at incorrect balance. Same thing, same format, but a different statute. Okay, once again, it's telling them to update the balance of the information of the report. I've included the latest account statement showing the correct balance. If you've got that, you want to send them the evidence of that being correct when you're using a Metro 2 dispute. It works if they're reading it Unfortunately, there's not human beings reading this all the time. So we have to make it easy for their systems to read, okay, as well. And you're going to hear me repeat this. It doesn't belong to me, paid as agreed, not mine in duplicate, has to be truth, cannot be speculation. In light of speculation, what should you do? Assume the contrary, that it's not correct. Okay, that is what we teach our processors. And if you ask me to train your processors, that is what I will teach them as well. This will keep you safe and secure and not aiding and abetting in a fraud. Same thing here, same sample here with incorrect account type. If we look at the accounts, closed accounts reported, right? Same structure here. Once again, a different statute from the previous statute. Now it's invoking 1681 IA1, which they've used in the past as well. Let's look at this one, incorrect date of last payment. Here, this is a bit more, right? I'm writing for you under the same statute, right? But this is the account information, the creditor name, and the reported last date. Now, this is the information that you're telling them to correct based on the incorrect data, which you're also stating. You're also letting them know that there's evidence of that documentation. So, be careful with Metro 2 reporting because, once again, if it's untrue, you want to really stay away from providing anything that can place you in a context of being untrue. And I would not err in that way. I would go ahead and gravitate to validating and verifying information and asking them to perform the investigation based on your findings. Okay, but you want to enclose copy of the report, maybe with a highlighted error, copy of the bank statement, if there's any information there that could be used or obviously your ID and your proof of residence, proof of ID, proof of social, right? Let's look at some technical errors. But before we do that, let's go back to the presentation here.
We have one question.
Yes.
Will you be sharing these examples with the attendees?
Of course I will. You just go ahead and fill out, go to the link at the end of the presentation, which is Jasmine's link, and she'll go ahead, and once you've go ahead and book a 15-minute chat with her, she'll give you exactly that. And if you need more, just engage us, okay? Because now we're going to be talking about technical factual dispute process, which in my opinion, and I'll let the cat out of the bag, is probably the best way to dispute, because you can use a technical factual dispute process in combination with a Metro 2 type process. And I've been alluding to this during the presentation by asking to verify, validate, and correct or repair, because if those cannot be done, because most of the time, unfortunately, our customers don't have proof of these things. That's a smoking gun. Let me ask this question of all of you and answer with a number here, a percentage. What percentage of your disputes are 100% validated with regards to it doesn't belong to me, it's not paid, it's not mine, or it's a duplicate? And it's okay. Just say we're not going to use this or publish this information. But what percentage of your customers actually provide you out of 100% with the actual smoking gun that proves that you can say that in a dispute? I'll wait. That's interesting to see. Do we have any numbers yet, Almas? We read them off as soon as. Okay, I guess nobody wants to expose themselves. I can tell you that most of your customers are not providing you with that, and quite frankly, that's a lot of data to go ahead and procure, based on the fact that you would have to do that with everything that they say it doesn't belong to them, or it's not mine, or it's in duplicate, or it's been paid as agreed. I would say that you want to move away from that process, especially if you're on a monthly dispute process, because you're trying to be competitive. And if you're trying to be competitive, your pricing for monthly dispute processing on a monthly is probably anywhere between $89 and $129, right? And for the base, if you have a good, better, best model for your base payment plan or payment model plan. And it should be in that area. And it should be accompanied by maybe a preface to that, which is maybe a credit consultation that is spawned from a written credit audit or of some sort, right? So they're going to start telling you, I don't know, I don't recognize that. Maybe they don't, but what if they don't recognize it because the account number is different, or it's been acquired by a collection agency which they didn't do business with? This is exactly why you want to validate or verify within the dispute reason, and that's what the magic of the technical factual dispute process is. It's fundamentally a process where you can go ahead and dispute the validity of any and all of those pieces of information, not just a few of them that conform to your base segment and your account details, but really to everything else as well. And you can combine these. You can dispute your delinquencies with the status of the account and possibly the account number, or combine that with the date of last activity as well, or the last reported date, right? If it's inconsistent among the credit reporting agencies, any of that data, your dispute reasons can address the data differently. So make sure that if you're not using ScoreCEO and you're using something else, make sure that you can create dispute reasons that are different for not only every single credit reporting agency, but could be different between each credit reporting agency, and whether or not it's a CRA dispute or a direct-to-creditor dispute or a data furnisher template of some sort or a collection template of some sort, like a debt validation or something like that. So you want to make sure that you can have different reasons for different letters. Think about it. It's all about frequency, and if you could dispute legally every day within a month without being deemed as frivolous, you'd probably have accelerated results within the first 2 to 3 months. Everybody would have a monumental amount of results. Unfortunately, you can't challenge things until every 30 days. I liken this or compare this to our electoral system, right? It might have been a smart thing to do when everybody was accounting for votes, 150 years ago, but not so much today with the amount of technology that we have. We can figure out who our elected representatives are within the first couple of hours. It shouldn't be that difficult. So I liken it to that, right? We have to make it as simple as possible, especially if we have the technology to do so. All right, so this is the way how the technical factual disputes is similar to Metro 2, right? You're going to identify all of the technical errors, and you can look at some of the potential violations that are happening within Metro 2. So a Metro 2 dispute can be contained within a technical factual dispute methodology, and you can see that by the way you construct dispute reasons, right? You want to try to categorize, and this is a recommendation. Categorize them between personal information, account data information, and sometimes compliance issues, right? That issues in a compliance that the CRAs or the furnishers themselves are making mistakes, right? You can go ahead and look at those issues. Like, for example, if you have a debt validation, your credit reporting agency should have a stay on that, especially if it's a collection account, for the next 30 days, because the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act mandates it that way, right? The FDCPA says that if there's an investigation, that they should not be sharing information with anybody, including the credit reporting agencies, until they validated that information when you're disputing directly to the creditor. Okay, so if within that period, the credit reporting agency responds to any of that same amount of that same data, they're actually in violation within their compliance issues, and you can go ahead and challenge that on a subsequent dispute. Now, obviously, when you use methods like this, they can become very intensive, because you have to do what the same credit reporting agencies and the same data furnishers are not doing, which is correlating one dispute with the next. So mind you that every time that you touch a credit or follow a process like this to that level of specificity, it costs you more to dispute. It's going to take you longer, because not only are you looking for inconsistencies, now you're looking for between the report and what you're going to do today. and how it's changed with regards to the previous report you've looked at. Now you're going to have to go and look at your disputes and see if what was asked to be performed actually got done. And that's a second or a third type of investigation on top of that. But when is it monetizable to do that? Well, when you sell customers a different type of method, a different type of payment model plan, like a pay-per-performance or a pay-per-delete plan, right? When you're doing that, you want to throw the kitchen sink at everybody out there legally and ethically to get disputes challenged correctly and on time and corrected on time as well. So the reason why you would do something of this specificity with this level of detail from one dispute to the next, excuse me, where it makes sense economically from a monetization standpoint, is probably only with the pay-per-performance model. Now, if you have a good, better, best model, right, you can explain this to the customer as your good, better, best model, and you can also accommodate more effort to a higher monthly fee. But that's going to be difficult to explain to a customer which has a problem just identifying what a FICO score is, or understanding the way FICO or any scoring model work at all. Well, you want to go ahead and submit disputes, right? You want to draft a factual dispute outlining specific items. And the way we do that is by doing that on every account item. So we can think of the template as a wrapper, right? As a gift. It's the wrapping on your gift. And within the gift is the box that contains all of the actual pieces of information that you want them to challenge, which we call dispute reasons. And then those dispute reasons are composed by 2 or more pieces of account data, followed by it's 2 or more pieces of account data, along with read the reason why, the ambiguous statement. You don't admit to it doesn't belong to me, paid as agreed, is not mine, or it's in duplicate, and followed by a resolution statement. And that format, you can go ahead and make the resolution statement the first thing you say under dispute reason, and then explain why later on. But you want to cover those 3 things. You want to have an ambiguous statement, you want to have 2 or more pieces of account data, and you want to have a resolution statement. It can happen in any order on one dispute reason, and you can come up with that dispute reason, or have a bunch of dispute reason based on different combinations of dispute field items that you're going to address. Like, you can have account item and account name. You can have account number and account name. You can have account number and account status. You can have account number, account status, and let's say balance. And you can create and classify your dispute reasons in advance to go ahead and just copy and paste those. And in ScoreCEO, if you're smart, you can add spinners to a lot of these letter items as well. So you can go ahead and change the variable data that can personalize some of these if you include them in your template every single round, and you don't have to change it you can use that template 10 different times. And if you include 10 different spinners with 3 different options, it's 30 different versions of that letter that you will never have to generate or repeat that same template. So if you're not using that in ScoreCEO, feel free to reach out to Jasmine or the team through our chat to go ahead and teach you how to do that, or show you how to do that, because that's definitely something that will improve your ability to get results. Because remember, it's all about change and frequency. So, request investigation. You want to let them know, either as a CRA or the data furnisher, that, they are, that they have to perform this investigation. And if they do, but that would be something that's included in the template, not in your dispute reasons, right? Because within the way we apply the technical factual dispute reason is that what's inside the box, not in the wrapper, is what's really going to inspire readability and frequency, right? And so it's going to change every month. You would be changing for a different subset of reasons. And think about it this way. If on the first round you say, this item doesn't belong to me, what do you say on the second round? You really don't you really can't say, what do you do? If they say it does belong to you, it remains the same. So they're basically validating that their information is correct. What do you do after that? So that is not the way to start, ladies and gentlemen, unless you're wanting to commit fraud. Do you get dispute results like that? Absolutely, because the system is flawed. But we should build businesses based on a compliant and ethical practice. We know better. And we should preach that to our customers so that they can go ahead and really understand what the difference is between what you do and what others do. Compliance is always provides longevity in how long your customers stay on with you, and your business stays afloat. I would rather sleep the right way every night than think about all of the potential issues I've knowingly made. Now, if you didn't know any better, and you're on this call, and you want to change, I go ahead and do so. I had a credit repair business, and I made a bunch of mistakes, and I was engaged by the local regulating body, not once, not twice, but 3 times, ladies and gentlemen. And on the 3rd time, they shut down a business that I had that managed almost 5,000 customers in 6 different brick and mortar facilities that we would co-locate besides banks and large automotive group dealerships. So customers would be actually denied, turn around, slap their heads and see credit store. And they would ask, and they would or be referred by an account manager. Sorry, hey, you need to address your issues there first. Okay, you wouldn't believe how many customers literally walk out of the dealership or the bank and just roll right in to our business. We also had a co-location strategy of placing brick and mortar businesses besides a large district cellular phone stores like AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, not the small mom and pop shops or the franchises. I'm talking about the district stores that are corporate owned. They get a lot of customers that are servicing from multiple vendors in one of those places, and we also had businesses around that. And I also had customers, because of denial of credit, just roll out of one store and come in and open the doors. I was just denied the ability to get a phone because of my credit. And in some states, that's a thing. Okay, so you want to go, like any other dispute, you want to go ahead and request an investigation and follow up with it. You can do better, right? And I wanted to conclude that conversation. One of the reasons why we created, or I started designing ScoreCEO, was specifically because of that. And let me tell you how that helped us. In the future, we had a customer that went ahead and violated and started saying things that were untrue and was partnering with an attorney, and they were challenged and sued by the credit reporting agencies because they were suing credit reporting agencies and data furnishers based on the fact that they were committing potential errors. The problem is that it costs so much to get something defended. Sometimes the juice wasn't worth the squeeze for the CRAs and the data furnishers, and they would go ahead and acquiesce and just delete it or pay a small agreed upon fine. There are companies that do that legally and ethically today, but in the past, you don't want to do something like that because you want to be careful because you might be sued right back. Well, they did it so many times that they sued this company, and it used to be one of our CROs that was doing disputes with us, and they dragged us into the dispute with Experian. And a year later, we were released from that dispute because every single dispute letter that we provided them followed a technical factual dispute method, and they saw that our CRO was making up his own disputes, utilizing our templates, but making up his own reasons and changing the content in a way that wasn't a verify or validate, but an actual statement like, it doesn't belong to me, it's paid as agreed, it's not mine, and it's in duplicate. I can tell you that we were released from that lawsuit. So we can say we survived Experian. We have E&O insurance at ScoreCEO, so our errors and omissions policy covered that. And also they were ready to cover the CRO, but the CRO was no longer a customer, so he was on his own. So just to let you know, our defense on that cost probably over $250,000, and we just paid our deductible on it. So E&O insurance is something that if you're doing disputes on the down low with people from other countries, please ask them for their E&O insurance. Or ask them if they do have it, to put it on a piece of paper that they do have it, because if they don't have any sort of insurance that covers you, you're in trouble. Let's go ahead and move on to some examples of these technical data, so you can understand what we're talking about here. Incomplete data, missing fields, there's a data first delinquency or last payment date. So the example, account shows a balance but lacks a date open field, violating Fair Credit Reporting Act. You can do something like that. That incorporates a Metro 2 type format with a technical factual dispute format. Or you could say something like, it seems to me that the balance and the date open could be incorrect. Could you please validate this and correct it, or completely remove it from my credit report? If you want to add some legal validity based on Fair Credit Reporting Act, USC 1681 EB. Okay, you can do things like that, but basically it's an ambiguous statement followed by two or more pieces of account data followed by a resolution statement. Inconsistent data, conflicting information across multiple CROs within the same report. Very important, right? You think, well, what the heck does TransUnion have to do with Equifax? Well, really nothing, other than they share data. Or they're listing the data that should be consistent amongst all three. I don't see a reason why all Equifax and TransUnion shouldn't have the same data. Unfortunately, data furnishers don't have to report to all three credit reporting agencies, and that's what starts creating inconsistencies. Unfortunately, credit monitoring companies and some data and some what we call real estate type reports, Meridian type reports. Some of them have inconsistencies based on they would report initially on all three, but they're not reporting, and they're violating their mandate to report on all three, and they're reporting on one or two or none at all. And that's a violation, because the original creditor, it's their obligation to report on a consistent basis. But they're looking to save money. Right? Every time they report, they have that's data that's being stored somewhere. That's data that needs to be paid for somewhere, either through a third party or costing them themselves if they own the platform, right? So this is the reason why you want to be careful with this, and you can use inconsistent data amongst credit reporting agents. A lot of you are doing this right now. Incorrect payment history, right? Well, they're challenging a 30-day late payment. Now, be careful with this, because once again, when you structure this incorrect payment history, you want to structure it in a way that it's not saying that the 30-day late payment is actually correct, right? You could say, once again, the payment history shows the 30-day late payment on June 23rd. I may be mistaken, but I don't remember that is true, based on the actual account number, which I don't recognize as well. Can you please validate both of these, the 30-day late payment in June 23rd and the account number? Correct them if incorrect, or completely remove it from my credit report. Once again, all twisted around, but it contains three fundamental things: an ambiguous statement, which doesn't say or allude to it. It's an actual thing. It's more like I'm unsure, which is totally valid, all right, and follows the letter of, or what we call the intention of the law, called the Fair Credit Reporting Act or the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, depending on who you're disputing to, right? And you're challenging the 30-day late payment, but you're not saying it. You're actually admitting it's not right, but you're saying it could be incorrect. Could you please check it out? Now, if they find any inconsistency, right, in that, or you see that the late payments are inconsistent between the CRAs, well, which one is right? These are all ways that you can dispute and be truthful and say what you want without saying something that will really force you to break the rules in some way. Balance errors, right? If you say that the balance is 0 and it's 500, be sure that you have that information. That is true. But if it's not true, you can say the balance that you're reporting is $500. I don't know if that is the exact balance that is due today, but if it's different than that, closer to a 0 amount balance, could you please correct it or completely remove it from my credit report? Now, we didn't use an additional piece of information. We used only one there. But what I did follow was an ambiguous statement followed by one piece of account data followed by a resolution statement. You could insert another piece of data like the status of the account or something that actually makes it, besides this number, could make it also derogatory, right? First, always challenge the derogatory items first if you have to choose. If you can go ahead and dispute them all, go ahead and do it. If you're using a technical factual dispute reason, because the reality is that you can go ahead and find a different combination of reasons or just to verify and validate the data if nothing else is incorrect that you can recognize. But you can actually ask to verify or validate because that's the right of the consumer. There's nothing that says that they can't. It's not that you say that you lie and say that that the system that it's correct and you're actually answering. How does the customer know that the account number is theirs? How do they know what the correct balance is if they can't provide you with that information, right? You can ask these pieces. You can have these conversations with your customers, and if you're recording calls, great evidence. Right, great evidence for future regulators if they decide to come and investigate you, right? Re-aged accounts, right? This is something that we see consistently, especially when accounts are sold, right? For some reason, sometimes the date of the first delinquency changes on the original creditor because it was sold, and they decide to re-age that account to not 2 years ago, but now to the date that they sold the account to give more power to the collection agency. I've seen that happen a bunch of times. Okay, and these are reasons why you can dispute account ownership disputes, right? If you don't know what the account is, you can also go ahead and say you don't authorize this account. But once again, I suggest that before you say something like that you think about that maybe the customer is wrong, and maybe you don't have to even ask to do an FTC report and make it simpler. Now, if you want to follow this process here because you're following a legal structure, that's a completely different type of dispute, and it's also a different monetization strategy. So there's no problem in you spending a bit more time going into that level of specificity. Any questions till this moment right now, Almas?
No.
So let's look at a sample FCRA dispute letter with regards to technical factual disputes. And this is a short one here. I know we're a bit long let's look at this dispute right here, right? This is combining Metro 2 with a technical factual dispute method where it's invoking both the Fair Credit Reporting Act and the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, right? Account information, account number, creditor name. Issues identified. It's identifying what's wrong. Legal reference. It's identifying the legal reference. And it's telling them what they're required to do, okay? But once again, you can change this to make this you can tell them what they need to do. If this was 100% correct, you could validate this information. If you can't, you want to use an ambiguous statement followed by 2 or more pieces of of account data, which are issues identified in this case, followed by a resolution statement, which you have a resolution statement here, and it's basing itself on a legal reference. Okay, missing data from first delinquency, DOFD, right? Issue data first delinquency is not reported, right? Which is required under the mandates, right? That's something that they miss a lot. Okay, and if it's not there, you can definitely allude to not being there because it's not. It's not in the report, right? And you can go ahead and refer legal reference, right? But you see what they're doing here, mentioning the actual account field name, mentioning the actual things that are wrong inside this account item, right? What's correct and what's incorrect, right? You want to go ahead and do that with payment histories as well, right? And you can have legal references. You can go ahead and add information if you have the information. If not, once again, 2 pieces of account data or more account data, followed by a resolutions ambiguous, a resolution statement accompanied within that dispute reason with an ambiguous statement, right? Either at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end. Re-aging of debt is another biggie, right? Issue, the date associated of the account has been re-aged. We mentioned this earlier. But the biggest difference, and I don't want to go through each of these, right, because it's redundant. The biggest thing here is that these are a lot of accounts inside the same template. You see, in ScoreCEO, you can create this format so that it automatically follows a Metro 2 or a technical factual dispute method, the one that you want to conform to for each one. And by the way, this is the way that we dispute at Score for our customers, the ones that we do our dispute processing with. Okay, the explanation of these laws cited are the same legal laws and 1692, right? So this is a great example of what a technical dispute format could be with regards to the template as a wrapper, and then all of the account items, including bankruptcies, including payment history inconsistency, re-aging of debt, statuses that are wrong, combination of both of them, and mentioning the incorrect and correct data or not, just asking them to validate or verify. These are all things that you can challenge. If it's information that's written on the report, legally the consumer can validate or verify any piece of information. Does this make sense? If it does, any questions till now? So what's the conclusion here? The Metro 2 method is great if you've got the evidence, right? If you've got the evidence, and you have the substantiating information, well, yeah, use that because it's just another another tool inside your quiver of tools, right, that you can use. And once again, what makes your disputes more effective are frequency, which you can't really change that. You can increase it by maximize it by disputing all the time directly to the creditors and directly to the credit reporting agencies. But after you've done that, you really can't change the frequency of it. You can't dispute before 30 days. It could be deemed as frivolous, right? But when you can with Metro 2, you can't just ask to verify or validate. It's normally something that you're really invoking based on the methodology. So most of the time you have to have a correct information to do that. Filing false reports, FTC reports, filing false criminal reports, all of these things are things that you need to go ahead and watch out for, because I've seen them done in the past. I don't think anybody on this call is doing that, right? But you want to stay away from that. And don't be wrangled into just because it gets you results, you need to do it. Because you got to do your bit. Your business should be run in a compliant way for it to be able to have the ability to be successful. It's the way we feel. That's our opinion at Score, right? Your technical factual disputes actually is, I think, a much better way to do it, because you can include a Metro 2 type format within technical factual disputes, like the way I showed you in the last method there. But more importantly, you can create predetermined, pre-established dispute reasons that follow the structure I mentioned, and copy and paste and place them in there. And if you have ScoreCEO, you can have them added to the dispute reason area, right click, and then just choose from that dispute reason right there. In the future, it will start populating all of the rounds and not just on the first round. It's going to start giving you what those dispute reasons are as well, so you won't even have to do that either. So like I said, both of these strategies are great In my opinion, technical factual dispute encompasses a Metro 2 type format, but it gives you the ability to lower your cost of investment by, instead of doing individual disputes on individual templates, that you can group these together and use technical factual disputes that can let you go ahead and dispute forever without repeating the reason or lying to the credit report agencies or the data furnishers, and which obligates them to go ahead and perform their investigations adequately. That's my conclusion to the differences between Metro 2 and the technical factual dispute method. If you want a booklet on how we do that, ask Jasmine on your meeting with her, and you can go ahead and book some time. You may want to copy this link into the chat, Almas, so that all of you can copy that and just book a call real quick. Jasmine can give you copies of these templates, can book a call with me if you need to, talk to me. I'll be happy to talk to any and all of you. Okay, if it helps you, it helps us, and we love that type of relationship. We're all committed to providing excellence because we all have skin in the game. That's why we say ScoreCEO is not just a piece of software, it's a platform, because we accompany that with great and compliant practices, right? On our next webinar topic, unfortunately, we're going to have to email you on that. We probably won't have a webinar in December because everybody is going to be busy with the holidays, including ourselves. And the PTO dates are just really bad. And I'd like to have everybody benefit from that. I do know that our first webinar will be in early January, and we'll be announcing in the next week or so. Jasmine will email you all and let you know what the next topic of the webinar, our webinar is. But I believe that next topic of next webinar is going to be a topic with one of the principles of the Credit Law Center. Now, most of you that are following these webinars have seen Kate and how she uses she's supercharged ScoreCEO to do incredible things with tagging, with running her process through tags, and managing her business with regards to sales and customer service and fulfillment, all with tags and customized campaigns that tell their employees what their next step is based on their roles. Everybody loved that webinar, that series of webinars. Well, we're going to have in January Bo Thomas on our call in January, and he's going to be teaching CROs how to use credit monitoring to go ahead and use a progressive pre-qualification strategy to not only gain more customers, but to recruit more real estate brokers or agents themselves, and have them start using your credit monitoring link as a pre-qualification tool instead of, going ahead and running a 3B credit report that will, probably hurt their credit because it's a hard inquiry. And how he's helped, hundreds, if not thousands of real estate agents do that. And now, he's become a standard. And not only that, but we're going to be discussing our preliminary launch of a do-it-yourself credit repair platform that you can either upsell or downsell to your customers, so that if they decide not to do business with you, they have something that you can also monetize them on, that they do their disputes automatically in a DIY process. We're going to be talking about that in January. Stay tuned, because that's going to be an exciting webinar. Are there any other questions before we go? I'm sorry, not Jasmine, Almas today. Almas?
No.
Before we go, and I'm going to keep mentioning this, please go ahead and if you're not part of NACSO, go ahead and be part of NACSO. These are the fees for $49 a month. You can get your employees certified, and there's a certification exam. Talk to them. Tell Donna Perkins where you saw this on. We don't make any money on this. This is not an affiliate thing. We just think that the more CROs that are participant in the credit in NACSO, the better it is for NACSO to continue to pay our lobbyists to represent us on real things, not just talk about and make a big splash about what's wrong, but actually pay lobbyists to go ahead and promote our agenda to the powers that be. You know, one of the reasons why we weren't able in NACSO to go ahead and challenge the CFPB on the TSR general ruling was because there wasn't enough money to pay the lobbyists. We had lobbyists and we have lobbyists, but the endeavor is a monumental task to realize and overcome. You know, everything helps, right? It's $2.99 to start, $49 a month. I think, and that covers between 1 to 5 workers, and there's some tiered structures here. There's a promo code that makes this $299 $100 off. I know that's for some of you, you're just getting started. That's just an expense you're probably not thinking of, but this is something that helps you sustain compliance in order for you to be successful. It's always great to have a lobbyist promoting our agenda in a legal and ethical way to the powers that be in Congress and the Senate. And we've done that before. And when NACSO was properly funded, I can tell you that we did great things with that. And the president of NACSO right now is Robbie Birnbaum. He is the probably one of the most versed or works for or represents Green Spoon and Mortar, which probably has had represents some of the more contested or famous cases, either that worked out well for the CRO or not, to defend them based on CROA infractions, right? So companies like CreditRepair.com, Lexington Law, they all need to hire somebody. The latest of the few was Credit Repair Cloud, which we feel for them. But I guess they made an example of them and then placed a ruling based on that. And that's why companies are obligated now to invoke the TSR before and not be bound to the TSR before they close a deal with a customer. This is all things that if we had lobbyists to help us, it would be better. So I know this is a big spiel about this, but go ahead and become a member. And all you have to do is copy this link into the chat us so that anybody can copy it. But go ahead and do this if you have the money to do so. It's going to be a great investment. These people actually do the work. I know them personally. Thank you so much. And we'll talk on our next webinar. Have a very happy Thanksgiving. Have a very happy Christmas, and I hope the best. And for all of you in the new year, Happy New Year to all. If we don't speak prior to that, have a great one, everyone. Talk to you in January.